What is good, everybody? Appreciate you all for tuning in. Look, we're back. Another Tuesday, back with the On the Ball podcast. You guys already know. If you're new to the show, appreciate you for tuning in. Of course, we're just gonna go through. Got some NBA we're going to talk about, but obviously most of the show is going to be free agency because it was a wild and crazy first day into the second day now. I guess a little bit longer than that. 'Cause I feel like the tampering happened even before Monday, but yeah, they're staying in the news. That's what they do. But before we obviously get into all that, gotta introduce the crew. So right here to my, I guess to your left, my right, my that backwards, depending how you're watching it. Got Brett, not guarding the two, he's guarding the three. How you doing tonight, Brett?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk sports. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, absolutely, absolutely. And then here, right below me, actually, maybe I should switch this. I guess it's the Gene thing in me. 'Cause I see Gene do it all the time, so I'm like, I'll put myself at the bottom here. I've also got Dylan back again. What's up, Dylan? Man, how you doing?
I mean, we're gonna obviously get into it. Been better as a Seahawks fan. Last time we spoke, it was just kind of minor, like, oh, we've released four people, and since that week span, we've traded Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. So, I mean, as a fan, it's kind of a new Seahawks season for me. We don't really do a lot of waves. We don't have a lot of turmoil. We don't even really make a lot of big moves outside of the draft. And now it's just kind of I don't know what's happening. Plus, we got Sam Darnold. But we'll get into that. Overall, I'm doing good. I'm happy. Conference tournament week. Love some college basketball. So, I mean, these are the bigger conference tournaments. I know the Big 12 kicked off today, for example. So, just enjoying college basketball, enjoying this free agency, just waiting to see who signs next.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is also a big part of the sports talk now. Conference tournaments. I feel like for
Oh,
not necessarily the biggest college basketball fans, it's like this is the time where you can kind of really get into it with March Madness right around the corner. Was it Sunday, Selection Sunday?
yep.
Which I always watch it because love seeing the schools' reactions when they see their name called, and I know Wire to Wire is doing a bracket challenge of their own with cash prize. So you guys got to look out for that and make sure you do join up with that one. But yeah, so like I said, we'll start with some NBA and then head off into the NFL free agency. And for the NBA, I think it's very simple. First take early this week, Stephen A, as he calls himself, Dr. Stephen Naismith. I guess that's when he's getting real serious about basketball. Decided to do his top duos in the NBA. So I wanted to get your opinion on his list. So let me go ahead and add that. Here we go. So according to Stephen A, fifth best duo, Steph and Jimmy Butler. Fourth, Brett, this one's for you. Got Giannis and Dame. Three, Jokic and Murray. Two, LeBron and Luca. One, Tatum and Brown. So what are your initial thoughts looking at the top five? Is he way off? Does he have the ordering wrong? Like, do you agree with him? Let's start there.
I, I mean, it's hard to say if we had to take a top five. Maybe you could argue with the ordering a bit, but it's hard to argue that these are the best five duos in the NBA. It's harder to think of maybe some other names you could like sprinkle up there, but when you kind of look at talent, the pedigree, and just what these players have done for the league so far, man, I mean, these are like some top tier players that you're having in there. And now maybe you could have some qualms about like maybe the Jimmy Butler Steph Curry one, especially since they're a newer duo. But I mean, even still, Steph Curry is still Steph Curry, and we can see what Jimmy Butler does. So I mean, overall, I think it's hard to argue that there's maybe some other duos that can make in. You could argue about the order, but overall, I agree with the list of teams that are there.
Okay. Brett, you got any qualms with this list, or are you fine with it as is?
Um, no, you know what? Actually, I don't really hate the list. I think it's perfectly fine. The duos that he threw up there at the end of the day. I think you can debate the orders, but it's really tough to debate the orders. Like
Mm-hmm.
Tatum and Brown deserve to be one. LeBron and Luca, there's both, one's a top 5 player, one's closer to a top 10. Hard to argue
Mhm.
against that. Like, I think like Jokic and Murray are they're a championship winning duo. So overall, I don't have a problem with this. I don't have a problem with the duos, honestly.
Okay.
Maybe Stephen A. Supermax he just got is finally paying off for him.
I mean, maybe. I mean, look, maybe it's good that he did it. I would love to see a perk list because we know Perk can kind of go off the handles a little bit, and he'd probably want to settle
Per-
some scores or create some controversy. You know how Perk is. Um,
Kirk would have
but
Tatum and Brown off the list, like,
no,
and he would
look,
have
he's
he would have
recently
number.
like kissing up to them. He's trying to get back in Boston's good graces. I know it's not going to work, but he's trying.
His number one would be like Mikal Bridges and OG Ananobi, and not even Brunson and Cat. Man is so out of touch.
Yeah, I mean he does love New York, so yeah, he probably would do Brunson and Cat. I don't know over who, but he probably leave like Jokic and Murray off. But all right, I mean, look, these are 5 duos that will obviously, well, at least should be there for the playoffs and everything like that. They'll have a lot to say for how their teams will perform in the postseason. So I guess let's take the list a little differently. If you had to do like a trust factor on these 5, would you have them in this order still, or would you change that up a little bit?
The only thing I would change is I'd probably remove Jokic and Murray up to probably 2. We've seen him. We've seen him win a chip. That's really what it breaks down to. We've seen this duo win before. Same thing with Tatum and Brown. So if I had to
Mm-hmm.
trust them, probably Tatum and Brown would be 1. Jokic and Murray would be 2. And then outside that, I mean, really the order's kind of what it is. I mean, outside of maybe Lillard and Giannis, these other 2 duos are fairly new. Even Lillard and Giannis are still fairly new themselves.
Yeah. Brett, I guess if you had to put confidence in these 5, would you
Yeah,
still
no,
have?
I think I have confidence in all 5 of these duos in like a playoff setting. I don't think that's a question. Who would have the most confidence still in Tatum and Brown? I think they have the best. Not only are the best duo, but just the best overall team around them.
Mhm.
LeBron, Luca. Yeah, no, listen. I think this is a good duos list, and I also think that these are 5 guys that when the playoffs start, all their games will just translate really well. It's going to be a fun postseason.
I agree. I think when you look at the East and the West, I feel like once you get past maybe the top 2, I think that's where a lot of the fun happens, especially in the East. Everybody's looking at Cleveland, Boston, yes, but Milwaukee, the Knicks, the Pacers, who I don't want to give a lot of credit to, but they're up there as a top 4 or 5 seed. Detroit, they're going to be a lot of fun to see. Hopefully, they can hold on to a top 6 seed, and then we get to see what that young group can do in a postseason setting for the first time. Can they shock a top seed? At least give them a longer series than they probably are expecting. Who knows? Like maybe this is the beginning of Detroit actually being relevant for a period of time. Like we don't know. And after that, get the Hawks and all that. But I'm trying to get y'all to disagree somewhere. All right, taking these
Man, it
5.
normally, and to be fair, Stephen A. Smith, man, he normally has things we can all disagree on, but he didn't do too bad on this one today.
Yeah, he did. He did do well. Um, so if you were to take the 5 we got here, who would be your 6th duo that just missed this top 5?
My 6th duo that just missed this top 5.
Probably like SGA and Chet.
Okay.
Like where like putting SGA mixed in with Chet still being a great floor stretcher and defensive anchor.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would probably be a lot of people's 6th best option, honestly. Or you can go with like in Cleveland.
Yeah, I was gonna say Mitchell and Garland.
Evan Mobley.
I was saying Cleveland. Would you go Mitchell Garland or Mitchell Mobley?
It's funny with Cleveland. I don't think they have the best duos per se, but they just like have the best like core like 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could find duos better than what Cleveland has. Like I think these five, but like you can't really find a top 3 or 4 than better than what Cleveland has. And I think if I had to pick a duo to represent them, you can go Mitchell Garland. I think that's probably what most people would do, or Mitchell, Mobley.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which duo do you actually use is the fun question.
Yeah, I mean it's not a bad problem to have. Like, I mean, I think with that Cleveland group, it's almost like a lot of people are expecting them to fail in the postseason because they have in previous seasons. But I don't know. I guess I'm excited to see what Cleveland can do, what Milwaukee, because I do think a lot of people are ready to write off Milwaukee, even though I keep saying it. You got Giannis, you have a shot in my eyes. And
Oh,
I was about to ask you, Brett, because I know you weren't a big fan of the Kuzma edition. So I guess what's your updated thoughts on Kuzma with Giannis and Dame? How's he performed so far?
right now, defensively, Kuzma's been fantastic. I think in that department, he's been a bigger upgrade than Chris than that end. I think the problem with Kuzma, 28% from three ever since he arrived, just isn't going to cut it. He's almost
Mhm.
like the exact player that like I was thinking that we're kind of gonna get, right? He's inconsistent in the half court. He's at his best when you can get him out in transition or attacking the basket. But his
Mhm.
energy on defense has been great. So overall, he's doing a lot better than, he's doing great. He's doing, honestly, my best predictions of him. So love what Kuzma's doing. And then the other pieces of that trade, Jericho Sims, he's been a fine athletic big man, great lob threat. Can't play him with Giannis. Already learned that the hard way.
Mhm.
And then Kevin Porter Jr. He's having the fakest shooting that I have ever seen.
Mhm.
Like Bucks fans are trying to convince me that Kevin Porter Jr. ISOs are gonna carry our second unit. Like shooting 70% since he's from the mid range since he's gotten here is unsustainable.
Mhm.
Like it's funny. I think Kuzma has lived up to what we needed him to be from the Chris trade, and I think so far all three of the pieces have. My only concern right now with the trade is with Kevin Porter Jr. and that 70% from the mid range before last game.
Mhm.
I just think that's going to come crashing down to earth really hard, and I think there's a real chance that the Bucks are going to be back to having an issue, with the secondary playmaker with the second unit.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, look, it's. I think I was kind of like you. I was a little skeptical on Kuzma as a fit because we know that Milwaukee was hoping to get probably the Lakers version of Kuzma early in his career, as opposed to Washington, where look, careers go to Washington to become irrelevant. So it is good to see him on a team that I guess depending on who you ask, whether a contender or pretender or not, but it should be good for him to be in a setting where playoffs are an actual legit like destination and see if that unlocks something in him to make him play a little better. But we'll see. Playoffs are quickly approaching, so obviously talk a little bit more about that as we get closer to it. Appreciate you tuning in, Joshua. Um,
Yes, this
you
is
know,
on
everybody,
YouTube.
yes, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, it's all over. Make sure you go check it out. Um, yeah, so just want to get NBA out of the way really quickly because obviously the main thing we got to talk about NFL free agency. And I know do have some breaking news. Brett, you want to go ahead and I guess let them know?
Yeah, absolutely. Lamar Jackson has a new weapon. His name is DeAndre Hopkins. 1 year, $6 million. DeAndre Hopkins will be going to Baltimore to join Lamar Jackson. So, it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Look, we know, Ravens fans always looking for a wide receiver. They got one in DeAndre Hopkins. Uh, I guess initial thought with the move, do you think he fits with Lamar's skill set? Do you think he fits with what we've seen from Baltimore's offense? Like, should he be a good fit in Baltimore?
Um, so I guess I can't really speak to the fit because it's always hard to speak to how they're going to work with another player once another. But what I think for Baltimore's offense they needed a bigger threat guy. DeAndre Hopkins is a good route runner, a good double me type of guy. We've seen him make miraculous catches before. Someone who can just be a target for some of these bigger corners or something like that. Zay Flowers is a smaller guy, a good receiver, shown a lot of flashes, creates a lot of space, but they need someone who can catch some of these jump balls, someone who can be a little bit more aggressive, maybe even more towards the red zone as well too, kind of open up that little passing attack because the thing with Baltimore is they get a little predictable in the red zone. It's either a Lamar run, Derrick Henry run. One of the two things are probably happening in the red zone, and it's still hard to stop. Give them credit for that, but just being able to open up that playbook with a receiver like DeAndre Hopkins, who you can throw in these red zone fades, different bigger double target type of guy, be really really good for him. Now, how it speaks to the fit, not 100% sure. We'll see. That's just on Lamar Jackson and DeAndre Hopkins chemistry. But overall, I think it's going to be a nice piece to the offense. It's a big, low risk, big reward.
Brett?
Low risk. I think there's reward here, but everybody's gonna hype this up. Nuke and Lamar. You know what this is to me? Hey guys, Julio Jones just went to the Tennessee Titans. Hey, Chad Ochocinco just went to the Bengals.
What, the Patriots? Remember that fun time?
Like,
yeah, he writes to the Seahawks.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I said, the Titans. Jory appeared. Hey, Jory, what's up? And that's kind of my point. Everybody's gonna think this is some immaculate fit. Like we're gonna see prime Nuke. I think if you keep your expectations tempered and understand he's older, he's not the player that he once was, and you're going to get a more diminished version of him, then I think you're going to be perfectly happy with this. But if you think that you're getting Houston Texans Nuke or even Arizona Cardinals Nuke, you're going to be disappointed. So I like it, but that's also because I think I'm going to be a little more realistic on this one. I think he's old, but I think he can still give them a little bit of juice on the offensive end there.
I mean, look, like I said when you broke it, the Ravens are always, well, fans especially, because I know Jory put their partying on X, yeah, because they're always looking for some big name to join over in Baltimore. I guess we look at it in a bubble. Hopkins might be the type of receiver that would work somewhat with Lamar, because he's a guy who likes to run a slant. He'll make a tough catch over the middle, as I've said on sideline to sideline, which is why I'm heralded as the Lamar hater. Lamar loves throwing over the middle. He usually loves throwing to Mark Andrews, which I guess we'll see what they do with him. But Hopkins is a guy who doesn't have to live outside the numbers. That's my opinion, Lamar's weakest aspect of his quarterback game. So, maybe I probably would have been more excited if this was, like you said, Brett, young D-Hop. At this stage, I don't know. I don't know how much of a needle move that this necessarily is. Baltimore did re-sign Ronnie Stanley, which was big for them. But so far, their offseason, I guess.
So I think short yardage and end zone, this is great. If you're expecting anything else, really, I think he can be a great chain mover, end zone threat, but anything else, I wouldn't expect too much from him at this point.
Yeah.
Man, Baltimore's been really quiet these first couple of days. I think it's been literally Stanley and this D-Hop move, and that's about it. Literally nothing else. Oh, no, they re-signed Patrick Ricard. They re-signed their fullback,
Yeah.
They didn't pull a 49ers and cut theirs.
Well, they did cut him, and then they re-signed him.
Yeah. I mean, look, the fullback market, not that great of a market. I mean, outside of
Taysom Hill and Kyle Juszczyk are the only reason that position was really alive. Yeah. Taysom Hill just being a gadget guy you could throw at literally any position on offense, probably even offensive line if you wanted to, just kind of save the fullback position.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Baltimore went into this with kind of limited funds, so this is probably.
I think getting Stanley back is probably one of the biggest things needed though. So I mean, if they're probably off-season goal for free agency was re-sign Ronnie Stanley and probably get a D-Hop like receiver. Probably just extra weapons, extra maybe a veteran piece like we said. So I mean, not much you can do with a little money.
Yeah. I guess speaking on some of the moves that have happened, we've seen everybody from uh, Zach Wilson going to the Dolphins to
1 year, 10 mil, which is crazy too.
I've seen a lot of people talking about the money that's been thrown around to some of these guys, and
Yeah, Daniel Jones getting 1 year, 14 mil from the Colts. That's whew.
I mean, it's funny because I see a lot of people are wondering why bring him in. I feel like this is almost like the ultimate layup of a quarterback competition. Like Richardson, if you cannot beat out Daniel Jones in a quarterback competition, it's over. I'm sorry, but it's just over at that point.
my guy Rod, what's going on, Rod? Rod, you already know. You already know. We'll talk about them in a little. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Yeah, I look the Daniel Jones thing. Look, for a guy who was with the Giants, complete failure, the money hanging over the team, gets released. The fact that he was sitting there today and there were two teams waiting for him to call one of them back and be like, I'm coming to you, like that might have been the height of Daniel Jones' career. That he was coveted by two teams. And I agree with you. I feel like the Colts are hoping that this is going to be some kick in the butt for Richardson to get his stuff straight. Because if you're a Colts fan, you probably aren't excited that Daniel Jones is coming in. You'd be even less excited if the young project and Anthony Richardson can't beat out Daniel Jones, because then that means neither of these guys are your answer, and you're just back into the cycle since Andrew Luck retired early, where you're just trying to find a guy who can get them to the playoffs, have them be somewhat relevant for a period of time. Like the Matt Ryan, uh, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz stuff was all cute and everything, but it's been kind of a disaster at quarterback for the Colts for a while now.
Man, I really honestly forgot Philip Rivers was a Colt for a bit.
Yeah,
That feels like forever ago.
it really does.
It's easy to forget.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Ryan a Colt. Man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess also let's look at another couple of quarterbacks that are actually still out there. With a lot of the stuff that's going on, some of these positions being filled up, what are we expecting for Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson? Like, is there going to be a spot for these two? Do we see only maybe one of them? Is there a chance that both of them can end up retiring because there's just nothing out there for them?
I feel both of them get signed. As a matter of when, who knows? Both of them will be on a team before the regular season starts. Aaron Rodgers, I feel like would be more so to retiring. I feel like Russell Wilson probably has a little bit more in the tank, regardless of what you feel. I don't feel like he's at that point of retiring, and if he does, it's probably kind of like you said, just nothing really else out there for him. So overall, I do think they'll find homes. You still got the Giants. They're a team that could be a draft a quarterback. And you still got the Steelers. They haven't picked up their quarterback yet neither. I don't think they'll re-sign Russell Wilson. I think Pittsburgh will probably go the Aaron Rodgers route, while New York will probably go the Russell Wilson route. Will either team draft quarterbacks or maybe safeties? Who knows? Quarterbacks still at play for New York at number 3. But overall, those people will get homes. Just a matter of when. I think just waiting to see where the market plays out, what else you can get, because with these two guys being your last quarterbacks left, and the Steelers and the Giants kind of being those only two teams that really kind of are in that heavy market for it, they can wait and see how things play out because they're just dealing with what's left anyways. So
Yeah, it's funny because the two teams we've rumored suitors for Aaron Rodgers are Steelers and Giants, right? I feel like those are just the two teams that get Rodgers and Russ, and I almost feel like it's just gonna be Rodgers to the Steelers and Russ to the Giants. It almost feels like, or you can say, I heard that the meeting with Giants and Rodgers went great, but I do think the Giants ends up with one of the two. But I don't know. Rodgers in Pittsburgh just, it seems like a great fit. They have more veteran talent there. We know Rodgers doesn't necessarily play well with the young guys quite often, so I think him in Pittsburgh, as much as it'd be kind of a trio of Rodgers, DK, and Pickens would give the team therapist fits.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's probably the better fit for him if
I
those are
feel
the
so
two
bad for
options.
Tomlin. I feel so bad for Tomlin trying to like coach that locker room down.
Yeah.
Oh, or Russ to
But
the
to be fair,
Vikings.
you gotta think he's been there through like that Antonio Brown stage. When kind of he's dealt with some Steelers stuff. If there's probably any coach in the league that's kind of dealt with some dysfunctional players. Mike Tomlin's probably up there on probably knowing how to handle it. So.
Yeah. But if you're Tomlin, you're probably hoping for 1 year where you don't have to deal with something like that. And
You're probably hoping you can get Jalen Milroe or something to come in just in case.
Give me someone who's normal. I feel like if you're Hard Knocks, because of everybody won't do it anymore because of the Giants and how they butchered that last year. If you're a Hard Knocks production, you're like, they get Aaron Rodgers, you got DK Metcalf and George Pickens. We gotta find a way to get them on. Like that would be.
That Steelers team's big. That Steelers team is going to be aggressive now, and throwing Aaron Rodgers in there is going to kind of make it a little funny. But overall, I mean, just that Steelers team is just like, man, like that's probably like the team that will beat you up in a fight. If you pick any team to like have a battle royale, probably the Steelers are winning that one right now.
I mean, they're probably going to start enough battle royales. Both Pickens and DK are head cases. They're going to call halfback dive, and those two will be busy brawling with the defensive backs 15 yards down.
I know, dude. Like literally, like the cornerbacks. And it's most of those guys beef with the number one corners. Now the number one and number two are just going to have to like get the crap beat out of them every game.
Yeah. Look, Steelers Ravens games will hit a little different now because
those are about to be some good games
anyway. Throw DK with Pickens into the mix. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of fighting in those games.
Not even like, because I'm not saying like Aaron Rodgers will go back to prime Rodgers. I'm past that point. Obviously, that won't happen. But just imagine if he can like kick it up a little bit in there. He has the weapons to work with in comparison. Because I know how we felt about him going to New York. He has way better weapons just now in Pittsburgh than what he even did with New York. They had to trade for Devontae Adams to get him there. It's not like he was already there.
I'd say with Rodgers, like if Rodgers like even plays like closer than he did to the second half of the season where he was absolutely fantastic, then yeah, like absolutely. The man went through a 13 touchdown to 1 interception stretch down the stretch until like the last game where it didn't go great, but I think Rodgers showed that he has some left in the tank. I think what, at the end of the day, whoever gets him has to understand that he's going to need more schematic help than you're used to with Aaron Rodgers. Normally, Aaron Rodgers is just an offense by himself. As long as whoever gets him understands that, okay, we're not getting the one-man offense in Aaron Rodgers, and we got to, help him with a strong run game and some more play action, then I think Aaron Rodgers can turn back the clock and put together a fantastic year. And I think if he can get hot enough, and I still think he could play at almost like a borderline top 10 quarterback in the league level.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're Pittsburgh, last year you went through the Russ and Fields experience, interchanging, trying to find the right guy at the right time, and then the way that the season ended with Russ really struggling in that playoff game. But yeah, if you bring in Rodgers, I don't know how excited you should be coming off of the season he had last year, but at least it's somebody different, I guess. And you'd also like to think that Pittsburgh will probably draft some guy at some point to try to usher into the new era with the Steelers. But I think it's interesting to see where those two kind of end up. I mean, we got some other big names that are still out there. Cooper Kupp looks like he's going to get cut because they couldn't find a trade for him, which I'm like, these teams keep telling people, we can't trade him, we're going to cut him. Well, what team's going to trade for him then? Times, like, you need to get somebody who's desperate, like, well, if he's a free agent, we won't get him. But it's just like, most of these teams are going to take their chance.
And I'm sorry, the wide receiver market's so thick. It's so thick as well too. Just saying that to a positional player like a receiver, nobody's gonna care because they're gonna be like, okay, well, cool. Tyler Lockett's there. Like Tyler Lockett's sitting in free agency, and not to compare the two, but it's just like, why would I trade assets when I could go sign a guy for like Tyler Lockett, and not have to pay him that contract? Because when you cut him, I can just sign him to whatever deal I want. I don't have to pay him the money that you're paying him, as well too. So there's a lot of different things to it. I very much don't like when teams are like, yeah, if we can't trade him, we're just gonna cut him, and then I'm just gonna be like, okay, man, I'll wait.
And
Let someone else give up the assets for him, or I'll just wait till I can try to sign him myself.
and the reality is that was never going to work because Cooper Kupp does look washed. He has not looked like Cooper Kupp for a couple of years now. So you go,
Injury.
we'll cut him. Like, okay, like unfortunately the man just can't stay healthy, and when he does come back from injury, he has flashes of who he once was, but you can tell it's just not there. So to me, like I said, that threat with Cooper Kupp was just funny. I'm like, nobody's biting on that. Like, he can probably still produce well in like a limited role as like a solid number 2 or 3, but
And in San Francisco would be nice.
yeah, if they need anybody.
I mean, there's a few places. I mean, Houston, they're about to go into the season with Diggs, who's still a free agent, isn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I want him to go to Seattle so bad.
Tank Dell got hurt. You're going to need somebody to play alongside Nico Collins there. Maybe they give him a shot. I don't know, but I agree.
I like Kupp there.
Yeah, I feel like the Texans need to sign somebody, whether it is Lockett or Kupp.
I like him going to the Chargers as well too. I think the Chargers would be a good spot.
Chargers could use one, yeah. But if you could sign one of them, Lockett or Kupp, who would you sign?
If
I'm biased here. I'm always going to say Tyler Lockett. Maybe just because I've seen that man literally drag his pinky toes in bounds 14 times in separate plays, to save quick, close games. I like Tyler Lockett. Man, Cooper Kupp probably is going to be really good. 99% of people probably should pick Cooper Kupp. I'm picking Tyler Lockett. I mean, we've seen what he can do, but probably even last season, Kupp probably had better stats. I'm just upset we don't have Tyler Lockett on the team no more.
Yeah.
The longest tenured Seahawk.
It's funny for my team. I'd probably rather have Tyler Lockett. I think Cooper Kupp does flash like a higher ceiling. However, sometimes availability just is the best ability. And one thing about Lockett, he takes care of himself. He plays in 15, 16, 17 games a year.
And I'm sorry, and it's because people complain about how he plays too. I'm sorry, you see Tyler Lockett one-on-one with a big linebacker. What is he doing? Falling to the ground. He's not getting hit. He is running out of bounds. Mm-hmm. He's not getting blown up. He's a smart player, and I feel like that's a lot of the times where he's going to be probably there in those close, crucial moments where Cooper Kupp's going to give you a big game. He might go out there, get you a big game, 10 receptions, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Tyler Lockett's probably going to get you 4 first downs and 3 fourth down conversions. So, I mean, it's just kind of what you really need. If you already have these big name receivers or a big threat, probably don't want to go Cooper Kupp. But if you want a safety valve, someone who's going to be able to play and be reliable, want to go Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would probably take Lockett as well. I'm a big fan of who the Seahawks had. I always respected Lockett's game. He's a guy, like you said, game in and game out, he's out there lining up, and he's big with production. He's a reliable guy. You can throw in tough situations. So I would take Lockett as well. But Rod, hopefully you're still in here because you didn't want to talk about Patriots. I feel like we'll take this opportunity to talk about kind of what our teams have done. I guess if you're happy or not with what they've done and maybe what you're looking for them to still do. As we did mention that there are still some free agents that are out there. They may not be the biggest names, but they're guys who can still contribute. So I guess, Brett, we'll start with you. Your Packers. What have you thought about what they've done so far in free agency, and what need would you like to see them still fill in free agency?
What need would I like to see them still fill? Probably just consistent edge rusher. That would be huge for me. Like that's the one area where I think if we upgraded that would just be the biggest thing that we could do right now is just get an edge rusher, and anything else is just kind of cherry on top. I actually like our free agency. I love the signing of Nate Hobbs.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with that is, it's 16 million guaranteed, which is just his signing bonus. So if things don't go well in year one, we can cut him and move on.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen the contract for Aaron Banks yet, but a lot of these big Packer contracts are structured with a
It's
lot
a
of the
lot.
money in the signing bonus and a lot of it coming up front. So I'm guessing, if I had to guess, this contract is probably be like a 2-year commitment with an out after the third year, but maybe it's just a 1-year commitment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing. I'm not going to cast too much judgment until I get the official structuring of the contract. Because 4 years, 77 mil seems like a lot, but the Packers are very smart in the way they structure their contract. I know a lot of people are like, "Well, you got to get a receiver." Like, I'm tired of that talk. We don't. It's
No.
tiresome. Here's the problem. They're like, they want us to aim for top of the market guys. Go get T. Higgins. Like, okay, guess he's the one receiver that if we got him, great. But I see too many people that are like, well, they should have gotten DK Metcalf. Let me tell you something about DK Metcalf. That was a bad move. I respect DK Metcalf. I think he's going to be good, but he is not going to be a second round pick and $30 million a year good. There's absolutely no shot. Devontae wanted to play on the West Coast, so I think the problem is people just have it in their heads that these, needs like wide receiver, that's what we need to fill. But the reality is the right fit and need just hasn't been there yet. So, I'll trust the process overall. I like, fortifying the line. I think, these games are won in the trenches as we've seen in like Philly and Detroit. So I like getting Banks to help, fortify that line and depth, give us more depth going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And secondary was a big position of need. So I'm probably in the minority of Packers fans, but yeah, I actually like our moves so far.
Would you like someone like getting like a veteran rusher like Joey Bosa or Judon since both of those guys are available?
Yeah, absolutely. I need somebody that can win one-on-ones, even if it's in like a situational capacity, because that's what we kind of saw with the Packers. One of their biggest issues was, right? They would try to only rush forward, but the problem is nobody would win a one-on-one, and the coverage was fantastic enough that it would hold up on the back end most of the time. But against the elite teams like the Lions and Eagles, they would put, 22, 30 points on us because they had all day in the pocket. So I just need one guy, and it could be one of our young guys stepping up. But we gave him that chance. It didn't look great. I would love to see us bring in like a Bosa or a Judon, even if it's just in a situational pass rush role.
Yeah, I'm looking at I guess some deals that have happened recently. See if anything are too big that we need to talk about. Uh,
Today's kind of been a slower down outside of
yeah,
like what Jonathan Allen signing with the Vikings. I thought that was a pretty big deal. Um, Really, other than that,
you're
I
not
don't think
saying
there's any.
before Brissett signed with the Cardinals, that doesn't move the needle for you.
To be fair though, out of all places he could have signed, I like him going to the Cardinals. I feel like that's a nice opportunity. Probably
I
probably put some veteran leadership in there. It's good. He can
Yeah,
speak Kyler Murray a little bit. Put a different mindset in the man.
make him a better pro. Absolutely.
I
Ty
think
Johnson back with the Bills. Got Nick Westbrook Akine signed with the
To
Dolphins.
the Dolphins.
I do like that one actually. I really like that a lot for the Dolphins. The Dolphins need someone like him, someone who's not going to sit there and pout if he doesn't get enough touches.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing with Westbrook Akine is he's a willing blocker. And they need some more aggression there on the outside, especially in the run game. They need some more physical players. So that is
Mm-hmm.
one under the radar move that I actually really liked this offseason.
You a fan
Yeah,
of
I
Matt
mean,
Collins to the Pats?
yeah, I mean, Westbrook Akine was a guy that I wouldn't have hated to see in New England. I do like him, but yeah, I agree with him in Miami works. Matt Collins, like Patriots fans are just so caught up on the fact that he doesn't like wearing shoes when he's not playing football, which you know he's kind of eccentric. But I feel like I've seen him with the Falcons. I saw he had like a good year with them. Thought he had a decent year with the Raiders when Josh McDaniels was there. So McDaniels will know how to use him. He's what 30, 31. You got a wide receiver room with a bunch of young guys. I don't hate that at all by New England.
The
Uh, Devin
the
Bush to the Browns.
Oh, I didn't hear about that one. I do like Devin Bush.
Um, Eric Stokes to the Raiders.
I did hear about that.
And
Former
we
first
talk
round
about
pick.
fullbacks. The Bills signed a fullback, Reggie Gilliam. So the fullbacks
Was
are
that not already their fullback?
yeah, yeah, 1 year extension. So
Okay.
yeah.
I was like, I
I
swear, I swear, there's like
running around
five
back there.
fullbacks in the league. It's like Kyle Juszczyk, Patrick Ricard, Reggie Gilliam, C.J. Ham.
Yeah.
Swear, there's probably like one or two more random ones, but like that's about it.
say the one guy I think got overpaid though. Over $9 million for Najee Harris in the big 2025. Come on now. That
I
that was
don't
an
hate it.
that was an
It's a 1 year
overpay.
deal. It's a 1 year deal though.
Yeah, that you could have found somebody better than Najee Harris for cheaper.
I mean, like we spoke earlier about Tyler Lockett. That man does not miss games. Najee Harris has had over 1,200 scrimmage yards every year. And so, I mean, it's something you can't find on that running back market right now. I mean, J.K. Dobbins injured, Nick Chubb injured. I mean, he's probably the best option. Granted, the money's not the best, but I mean, you're probably not going to find anyone reliable enough out there on the free agency market, especially for running back.
No,
I get what you're saying, Brett, because Najee Harris isn't like the most explosive guy. He's like your 3, 4 yard type of back, and that's about all he's gonna get with the occasional breakout run. I kind of think with Harbaugh, that's what Harbaugh just wants. He wants a guy like third and short. I'm gonna hand it off to you. You get that first down. We keep it moving. Get Herbert another set of downs and keep like just matriculate down the field. Like that's Michigan football. So I think if Najee Harris could go anywhere, I feel like Harbaugh is a coach that should work for him. Like I said, I understand where you're saying like, could you have found other options for maybe a little cheaper? Maybe. I mean, you could have probably drafted one, but I guess as a veteran presence where Harbaugh is trying to kind of fix what Staley had out there all those years with them underachieving and everything like that, like Dylan said, I don't hate it necessarily. If you don't look at the money, like I think the fit makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, say that.
Yeah,
No,
go ahead, go ahead.
that's fair with the fit making a lot of sense, but that still just seems like a way overpay, even just for a year. Like, yeah,
Agreed.
that's a lot of money for. And I get it.
I
He's
mean,
reliable. He's going to absorb a lot of pain and
Mm-hmm.
punishment, but I still think you could have not only you could have found somebody reliable either in the draft or somewhere else in free agency at a cheaper price point than what you signed Najee for.
I agree. This is a very, very, very deep running back class. So, I mean, he definitely could have used that money elsewhere and just signed, drafted one of these, 14 running backs who probably could go in the first 2 to 3 rounds.
Yeah,
I mean, you have Trayvon
yeah,
Henderson and Quishon Judkins. I mean, those guys are late second round. Caleb Johnson, Mario Handpick could sneak in the first round. People wouldn't hate if you drafted him in the first round.
yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned him right now, but even a guy that Harbaugh knows really well, Donovan Edwards in the draft.
Mm-hmm. Oh, probably not. Maybe, but he had a bad year at Michigan. They let the backup at Michigan outrun him.
I mean, but hey, if once again, if someone's gonna look for him, I would be surprised if the Chargers don't pick Donovan Edwards some point in the draft. I'm not saying you use a first or second round pick, but I'm just saying. Um, so I guess to answer Rod talking about the Patriots are back, baby. I guess we'll go ahead and talk about it because a lot of people looked at the Patriots the past couple of years. A lot of the narratives have been that Robert Kraft is cheap. He doesn't want to pay for anybody. I mean, based off of yesterday, Robert Kraft opened up the wallet and was showing out money left and right. So I mean, if you guys are new to the show, I am a Patriots fan, so I would probably go last with this. I do want to hear your guys' thoughts because I've seen a lot of an array of kind of analysis of what the Patriots did yesterday. Like some people thought they overpaid for a couple of these guys. Some were like they should have done a little bit more. Because, like you said, Brett, DK Metcalf made waves with Patriots fans as well. They wanted the Patriots to be in on that. They wanted the Patriots to be in on Chris Godwin, who decided to return back to Tampa Bay, even though the Patriots reportedly gave him $20 million more, and he decided to go back. I can't fault the Patriots for trying to get him if he decides to stay for less. So, what were your thoughts on like what the Patriots did? Like, what was your favorite signing from them, or which one you might not have liked as much?
Um, I'm a big fan personally of the Carlton Davis signing. I thought he was a really good cornerback in Tampa. He kind of struggled a little bit with some injuries, different things like that. Overall, though, when he's healthy and on the field, he plays like one of the better cornerbacks in the league. Not saying he's like top 10 or anything like that, but he does play like one of the better cornerbacks in the league. 3 years, 60 million might seem a little bit high, but that's kind of just roughly what the top cornerbacks are going to go for in this league now. We just saw someone like J.C. Horn get absolute crazy money, and different things like that. So I mean, Carlton Davis, I feel like, is a good signing. Someone who has that veteran leadership you can throw next to Christian Gonzalez, who's looking like a beast already at a cornerback. Someone that is a reliable on the other side of the ball. Someone that you don't have to stress about, to make Christian Gonzalez kind of be that like number one corner, that kind of lockdown piece in that secondary where it has to rely on him. You give him some help. Someone that is good. Someone who knows how to play the game of football like Carlton Davis. I like that one a lot. I think it's going to help that secondary out tremendously.
Yeah, I like most of the moves that the Patriots made. At the end of the day, they're a young team with just a lot of young contracts, so you can afford to overpay a little bit. Like, I thought that the Milton Williams, Carlton Davis, awesome. The one guy that I think got a little overpaid would probably be Harold Landry. That's a guy,
Agreed.
uh, at the end of the day, when it comes to Harold Landry, the problem with him is he's just pretty terrible at rushing the passer. He had one of the lowest pass rush win rates in the league last year. So he's a very effective run stuffer,
Mhm.
but like you're not going to get much in the pass rush game. And I think that's one area that the Patriots really needed to make a splash in, which is why Milton Williams. I think that's really what they're trying to do with him. But overall, I like the Patriots offseason. If there's the only one guy that I think got overpaid, I think Harold Landry got overpaid.
Yeah, agreed to that. You pay Robert Spillane a lot of money, and then play Harold Landry a lot of money, and both of them are exceptional pass rushers. I know Spillane's more of a linebacker. Some of that guy's going to play a little more coverage, different things like that. Good run defender as well too. But when you look at that pass rushing side, I mean, paying someone like Spillane and Landry, I felt like you could have paid one and found a better in what more of a need in what you needed in the other. Not that signing both of them wasn't bad, but I felt like you could have signed one and looked for better needs in that other position to fill up there. I think they kind of do a little bit similar, so both paying them a lot of money kind of makes it a little rougher. But that left side of your ball is probably gonna be really good, left or right, wherever they play.
Same.
Yeah, I mean,
I think running on the Patriots is going to be hard this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the Spillane thing might be something that I don't know if it affects Bentley or something like that. But look, I think there's been a lot of question about whether Elliot Wolf or Mike Vrabel were calling the shots. Yesterday told you everything you need to know. Vrabel is in complete control of what's going on in New England, and I have no problem with that. Landry's a guy that he knows really well. That's like a culture signing. You know, Colin Davis was with Detroit. He got Tyrell Williams as defensive coordinator. So now he has a guy in the building that knows his system. It can kind of help the other guys run it correctly. I do like that they attacked each level of the defense. Milton Williams, that Super Bowl performance alone made him a lot of money. So there was a good chance he was going to get a lot of money based off of that. And
that's what happens. You play the best in the biggest game, you get paid. I mean, look at Malcolm Smith. He got a pick six in the Super. I hate to bring up Seahawks stuff, but he got a pick six in that Broncos game in the Super Bowl. Won the Super Bowl MVP. What did happen next year? Raiders paid him a lot of money in that offseason. Paid him a lot of money just for him to be a bad backup linebacker. But You play good. You play good in the best game.
Right.
You get paid.
Yeah. So, yeah, and the Panthers thought they had him because I was ready to, tell
So
all the
yeah, I mean, it
Panthers
was
signed him, and
confirmed.
I was like, the Panthers are being real aggressive. They seem like they have this new energy because of Bryce Young playing well last year in the second half, and they have made some other signings as well. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, he's going to the Patriots. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now. Uh, I guess to answer the question I asked you guys, like, a need I would like to see them address still. They did get Morgan Moses as a tackle. He's like 34, but, tackles can play until they're late 30s if they, keep themselves in shape or whatever. I would like to see probably another lineman brought in. And I know they brought in Mac Hollins. I'm not going to, hate on that move at all. I wouldn't mind another wide receiver. And look, I would love to see Lockett in New England. That's just me. And obviously the draft, hopefully they do a little bit more on the offense in the draft as well. So I
What
guess
about like an Amari Cooper? Would you like him in New England?
I've gone back and forth
I'm
on
just thinking
Amari
of veteran
Cooper.
guys that would be nice because it's like my only problem with like obviously you could draft receivers. It's just you're just adding more to that young
Yeah,
depth.
you got more young guys to an already young room. Yeah.
I
The only with Cooper is he had like a drop issue last year.
I think
That
the
worried me.
I think the real problem with Cooper potentially going to New England is if New England's still rebuilding next year. The problem with Cooper is we kind of saw it in Cleveland where he checks out if it's not going well, he will just mentally check out, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what it looked like happened in Cleveland,
Yeah.
and that's why he looked more a little more rejuvenated in Buffalo than he did in Cleveland. He wasn't that much better, but I think he was there was enough an improvement to kind of look back and look, yeah, he was kind of mailing it in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the Patriots, I would maybe lay off of him just because I don't need, things to go bad, and then he just kind of starts coasting. I think he's a good talent, but he's one of those talents that needs to be on a winning team to really realize his full potential.
I'm just throwing names because while I was looking at other names, I was like, Stephon Diggs ain't gonna go there. He ain't gonna go there. Keenan Allen, probably not. Like Mike Williams, probably not. Deontay Johnson, probably not. Because those are all in the same boats as Amari Cooper. They're just gonna want to be on a winning team. Like I feel like if they're not on it in a good environment, in a good locker room atmosphere, like they just check out. Every single one of those guys, Diggs, Cooper, Allen, Johnson, Williams, all of those guys are very similar in those type of things.
Yeah, and look, if I guess if the Patriots did have an issue with Cooper possibly checking out, then yeah, I probably wouldn't kick the tires on him at all. Um, Steph Diggs, I'm kind of interested to see where he ends up because he's a guy. He might be a little older than you think because he's in his 30s now, and we've seen him have productive years. But I feel like the way that it ended in Buffalo, and then last year getting hurt, like his stock is obviously dropping a little bit. I mean, somebody's gonna give him a deal, probably.
I want him in Seattle. He doesn't need to be a wide receiver one. He can be comfortably being a WR2. We got JSN there at the one, Stephon Diggs at the two. Give Darnold a little more weapons. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about that. Geno out, Darnold in, up in Seattle. How are you feeling about that, Dylan?
So, man, at first I was very, very vocally against it, and I'm not a big fan of Sam Darnold. I'll be totally honest with that. I'm not a big fan of people, because the year before this Minnesota year, we saw Sam Darnold and he was not good. He was not good. No one gave him that. He was playing backup for the 49ers, playing backup to Brock Purdy. He wasn't good. Had a great year this year. Kind of choked towards the end, kind of crashed towards the end. Overall, though, if it came out that Geno wanted, 10 to 15 more $1 million per year than what Seattle was willing to give him, Geno Smith is 35 years old. How much is he going to be able to play at the pace that he's at now? I'm not too sure. Sam Darnold, 27 years old. So we're paying Sam Darnold 11 to 15 less $1 million to be 8 years younger in this system. That's something you just can't complain about. Are we going to get probably the same production? Who knows? but it's not like they are going to probably be too far off from production from each other anyways. I mean, if we're looking at a quarterback ranking, where are you ranking Darnold? Where are you ranking Geno Smith? I imagine they're probably not too far off from each other. And Sam Darnold's, like I said, 7 years younger than Geno. It's going to be interesting to see how this works out with us. You know, my biggest thing is Sam Darnold did good because look what he had. Aaron Jones, who just got a big extension, to come back to Minnesota. Justin Jefferson, who, if he's not your number one receiver because of Jamar Chase, he's probably your number two receiver because of Jamar Chase. Jordan Addison, who had a great breakout year, and T.J. Hawkinson, who's probably you'd probably say one of your top five tight ends in the league. And so, Minnesota did really, really good at setting up for him because they were setting up for J.J. McCarthy, to kind of take in this team. And Sam Darnold just got to reap the benefits of what, Minnesota did with that team. Seattle's going to have to change it up. Seattle's, going to kind of have to work around him. Also, Sam Darnold's going to have a lot more pressure. In Minnesota, he did not have any pressure. People knew who he was. He didn't really have that pressure to perform, so he could go out there to perform. Now you got a big extension from a team who is looking at you to be the quarterback of the future for right now. I mean, no other plans are beyond the place. It's not like we have a rookie. We have Sam Howell. So a lot more pressure on you in Seattle. The team is very loving. The atmosphere is very caring. But if you don't perform, they're going to hate on you. And we've seen time and time before, Sam Darnold in New York, Sam Darnold in Carolina, when you can't perform, the pressure gets to him. So I'd like to see how he does with that. But Seattle's always been at least trying to be very good, unless, of course, it comes to, building an offensive line, at least trying to help their quarterbacks, rather it be giving them running backs to, using the run game. This is probably the most barren Seattle's receiving core has been in a while, and we've spoken that before. Seattle has really never had just like one receiver you can trust on. They've had, slews between Doug Baldwin, Jermaine Kearse, Percy Harvin, Golden Tate, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Sidney Rice. So throughout the years, they've just had receivers who could come in and be really good. Now you got to try to have to build around Sam Darnold and kind of build that identity again. So I like it. I like, that it's cheaper. He's younger, and we can kind of build more of identity of what we want to do, kind of sign some more guys around us that will build that. But we also know who Sam Darnold is as a player. We've seen Sam Darnold, at his lowest lows. We just recently saw him probably at his highest high. Can he keep that? He's got to show it.
Yeah. And that's clearly what Seattle's paying for. They're hoping the good Darnold from last season can be more consistent. Because obviously if they pay this out for him and he turns into the end of the season, going into the playoffs and how he struggled, then that fan base is not going to be too welcoming. It'll just kind of rehash his Jets tenure where that got ugly really quickly.
And the thing with Sam Darnold, too, is by all accounts, I've never heard any problems with Sam Darnold in the locker room, even as a backup. And the thing with Sam Darnold, even if, let's say, it doesn't work out, he turns into bad Sam Darnold, I still think that, you know what? You can still bring in a young guy next year. You can have him learn under Darnold for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he still would be a great mentor piece. And the thing with the Seahawks is they don't really have a lot of guys on big contracts right now. And I think the only guy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they'll probably have to extend soon unless they already did. I know Woolen's going to need a new deal, or JSN's probably going to get a decent extension, but you're not paying a lot of guys. So I think paying a quarter.
and DK were our two highest contracts, and then Draymond Jones, which we've released, cut, and then Tyler Lockett, which we also cut. So our top four guys all out of the building, cap-wise.
Yeah, so I think that this is a fine move. Like, if it works out, great. I would love to see Sam continue to ball out. Even if he has a down year and he struggles and you realize he's not the guy, like bad Sam Darnold gets you a high pick in the draft. So I think it's a fine move. Best case scenario, you have a starting quarterback for 3 years. Worst case scenario, you have a starter for 1 and a mentor for 2.
I'm planning tanking for Arch. That'd be fine. I'll put Arch Manning, Kenneth Walker, JSN. That'd be fine.
Yeah. I mean, look, we know that talk's going to start once the season begins about Manning.
Seattle's never had a number 1 overall pick ever. They're like one of 3 teams to never have a number 1 overall pick. That won't happen. It's not Seattle's identity, sadly. We'll go literally 1-5. We'll go 1-16 before we go 0-17 to get the first overall pick.
I mean, look, and that's a division that if Darnold can come in, play well.
It's milked. It's not a good division.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams will probably go into next season as the favorite because you have Adams, you still have Stafford, but they're a flawed team. I mean, most teams in the NFL have their flaws, but you have them. You have the Cardinals, who can they build off of last year, where they started off really well and then slowly faded back to the pack. And they have the Niners, who the Niners are kind of letting everybody out of the building because they got to get their quarterback signed. And once they sign Purdy, like, what else are they going to do? A lot of these free agents are being signed around the league that once they're ready to kind of jump into the free agent pool, there's not going to be a lot there. So if Darnold can be early season last year, Darnold, then Seattle, you got to look at yourselves and be like, why not win the division next year?
It's a little sad that the 49ers' biggest move was signing Luke Farrell to 3 years, $20 million. And it's like, why would you sign a tight end out of all things when you know you lost 2 defensive ends, you released an edge rusher, you had Drayvon, you had Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Shavarius Ward, all those guys just leave you. It's like your whole defense is literally not a single person on there that isn't Nick Bosa and Fred Warner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. And it's all
they brought Salah back to coach what on defense?
You know, it's funny, if Brock Purdy wants that top of the market quarterback money, which if I'm Brock Purdy, I'm pushing for every penny I can get.
Yeah.
If I'm the 49ers, I'd consider trading him or letting him go somewhere else. I think Brock Purdy's talented, but is he talented enough where you can pay him $55 million a year and still be a competitive team? Because once you get that much money, you're going to lose pieces, and it's going to, put more pressure on you. You're going to have to carry the offense more. Can Brock Purdy do that? I don't think he's a $55 million a year quarterback or a 50. And if he wants to push for, that number, which he absolutely should, if I'm the Niners, I'd consider letting him walk. This is a system that, helped Brock Purdy look good. They took Jimmy G to a Super Bowl. Like, this is clearly a system where you can plug in a multitude of different quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm the 49ers, I'd consider doing it again if the price gets too rich for my blood.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think the 49ers, and it sucks, I feel like the 49ers, and not wishing injury upon anyone, would probably just love to see Purdy out for a couple weeks last season just to see if they could have thrown anybody in there with, done similar results to see, if it's really him or is this the system we run. Because I love Purdy, man. But are you and I hate to bring Seattle up in comparison. Would you rather play Brock Purdy $55 million a year or pay Sam Darnold 36?
That's a good question, especially when you
those are things you have to look at because paying Brock Purdy around that money is it costs you so much as where it gives Seattle in that sense an extra $21 million. And I bring up Seattle for example because Geno Smith was wanting the same amount of money. And Seattle didn't do it because they're like, probably it's not going to give us this flexibility we want. Same reason we moved DK Metcalf. He wanted $30 million a year, and we were probably like, that leaves us, not with much flexibility to do these specific things. So, no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the rookie, and I think, in this, not to blame, but the NFL draft has to do the blame with all of this because the rookies we be getting, the rookie quality, regardless year after year, we're like, this isn't a good class, this isn't a good class, but there's still rookies who come out there and have just been performing like first, Pro Bowlers, first team, second teams, all pros, they're rookie seasons. So a lot of these teams are, not sold on signing these older, veteran, aging guys or people who want these massive extensions because they're like, man, we can draft a guy, 1-2 weeks, messed up, but 1-2, seasons in, they're already doing the results that we need, and we just have to, pay them accordingly when we have to. 3-4 years maybe down the line, rather than keep this guy for 50 years, 30 million, and not be able to do work with it for 2-3 years. It's
Yeah.
like people only want to pay quarterbacks now. People only want to keep quarterbacks
Hmm.
for long-term extensions. No one wants to pay on any of these positions because who's still undrafted.
Yeah.
except
And
wide receiver apparently and edge rusher.
yeah, yeah, wide receiver, edge rusher. It's basically they're gonna pay whatever the Eagles paid. So everybody's looking to get pass rushers. They're gonna probably want to pay linemen. Like the trenches are now, you're hearing that word all over the place. Building through the trenches because that's the way the Eagles did it, and look how it worked out for them. But for Purdy's sake, if he does sign, the I guess the detractors or haters you want to call them who he has, he can prove a lot of them wrong next year. Because now there is no Devo Samuel, who's in Washington. Brandon Ayuk, for like the fourth year in a row, is like on the trading block. You still have Kittle, but Kittle's kind of getting up there at this point. Like, yeah, McCaffrey, yeah, but if Purdy goes back there and can get the Niners to the playoffs, then look, we may have to reevaluate how good of a quarterback he is. I don't know. Like, I like Purdy. I like the story, I guess, being Mr. Irrelevant. And then look, he comes out of his rookie contract and he could make 45, 50 million. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. So I did mention Washington.
Yeah.
What do you feel about Debo in Washington?
Debo in Washington, I think he's a great gadget guy. He's a great utility guy. And I think going to Washington where they have Scary Terry to kind of take the number one responsibility from him, I think that's good for him. I think that it's going to be a great fit. Like I said, they can get creative and use them in a multitude of different ways. I think the only way they can really mess this up if they try to use him as a straight up, traditional receiver, because he's not that. I think he kind of
Mm-hmm.
showed that last year. He was at his best, a couple of years ago when they're lining up in the slot, the backfield, out wide, and just being unpredictable with him. But, honestly, I still love what the Commanders have done as well. Shout out to that Laramie Tunsil trade. Did they
Mm-hmm.
pay a steep price? Yeah, sure. But at the end of the day, that was a great trade. That was a great trade for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think with a guy like Kingsbury running the offense, like you figure he could probably get creative with Debo. We'll probably see him line up in the backfield a little bit, out in the slot, out wide, you know, pre uh, motion, I guess, before the play, jet sweeps, all that kind of stuff. Like I agree with you. Like, don't put Debo like in a box and be like, oh, he's going to be our slot guy or something. Like, just use him all over the place. Like Taysom Hill, like what Taysom Hill does in New Orleans, or I guess separate quarterback because I don't know if Debo can do that, but just use him as a guy to give Jaden Daniels an outlet when he's trying to find guys down the field. Like Debo can create a little space underneath and get the ball in his hands and let him rack up yards after the catch. So I liked that move for Washington. I think when you look at the NFC East, like clearly the Eagles and Washington have distanced themselves from the Cowboys and the Giants in that division. Like it's not even a conversation at this point. Like who are the better teams in that division right now? The Cowboys did re-sign Brian Anger while we were talking, so
The the Cowboys are
Jerry's
just
getting that punter locked up.
the Cowboys are just idiots.
They
Them and the
also signed Colin Connor.
them and the Bengals are kill me because these are two franchises that are trying to pinch pennies and be cheap. But you know what the best way to save money is? Just lock up your superstar players early.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some players that are surefire superstars. I don't think anybody's sitting here going, well, Jamar Chase is going to regress next year. No, he's a young superstar entering his prime. Like you pay that man.
Mm-hmm.
But now guess what?
A perfect example, Micah Parsons.
Exactly.
Miles Garrett getting the money he did
Mm-hmm.
has the Cowboys just angry because you know what you could have done. You should have paid Micah Parsons before the Max Crosby extension. Didn't get it done. Should have paid Matt. You should have paid Micah Parsons before Miles Garrett's deal got done. You didn't do it. And now you have to sit there with Myles Garrett, who thinks he's probably one of the best defensive ends in the league, one of the best edge rushers in the league, who now wants to get paid probably $5 to $6 to $7 more million per year than what you're going to have to pay him because you didn't get the deal done sooner.
And like last year, Jamar Chase, they were talking about, well, he wants to make the most money just for any non-quarterback. Last year, that would have been like 35 million or like 36.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like 41 or 42. So, like, I think those two teams are just some of the biggest, like, almost losers of free agency just because these extensions happened. And now, guess what? Your team just got a lot more expensive.
Yep.
Agreed.
And they had Higgins on the franchise tag last year, decided not to address that. And then they put him back on it this year, haven't addressed that either. And so far, what have they done? They told Hendrickson, hey, go find a trade, we'll facilitate. So now, if you're Joe Burrow, it's like, I've already lost Joe Milton. I mean, not Joe Milton. I know I got him on the mind, but Mixon, sorry, the running back, lost him back when running backs were devalued. We already know. But I got Chase and Higgins who still aren't signed. And the ownership keeps talking about, oh, we're going to do all we can to keep Burrow and the wide receivers together. Well, Tyler Boyd's already left. Higgins wasn't happy on the franchise tag last year. Why did he be happy on it again this year? So Burrow's probably looking around like, there's a chance that I may be in the same situation next year with Higgins probably going out the door, and Chase could be going out the door because the front office doesn't want to give him what he wants. And then Burrow's going to be like, I mean, Andrew Luck did it. Why wouldn't I just call it quits early? Like, what am I staying here for? To sit here and try to win games 42-40 because they won't spend on defense, and I'm having to make up for it offensively by putting up crazy numbers year in and year out just to get us to 9 wins like they did last year, to miss the playoffs by a game or so. But like, I don't understand because like you said, Brett, I don't get the Bengals at all. Like, you actually have a quarterback that's really good, got you to a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and you've taken that for granted, knowing your history of not being all that great. Like, you would have thought they'd have jumped at this opportunity to lock up guys to try to keep this going. But now it's like they're just willing to let it kind of play itself out.
Also, releasing Alex Kappa.
Going, you can't do it.
Also, releasing Alex Kappa, who's probably one of the best guards. Not obviously probably one of the best offensive linemen Cincinnati just had on their team, but arguably one of the best guards there were last season. Just graded wise, just one of the best overall guards when Cincinnati already has an offensive line that has been known to struggle. It's kind of been, their problem. And for some reason, Joe Burrow got hurt, so early on in his career is because Cincinnati didn't have a great offensive line. So now you go release, one of the better guards in the league when, you could have probably, maybe not signed Joseph Asai to $7 million a year. Or, I'm sorry, that Mike Gesicki extension probably, you probably could have just let him walk on that one. And just different things like that.
So
where, oh, go ahead.
No, I'd say, I'm gonna push back on that Alex Kappa one because that man was just atrocious for him. He was graded really good. He didn't let up like a single sack for him this season though. This year he was literally tied for first in sacks allowed, pressures allowed, and injuries allowed.
Oh, what I read was someone said like they released him and he had was graded really good run blocking wise. I wasn't sure if it was sacks or run blocking wise.
No, he may have been a fine run blocker, but he could have been the best run blocker in the game, and that would have made him an average guard just because of how bad he was in pass protection this year. No, and it's funny because if I'm the Bengals, this is going to be a tough choice, but I'm letting T. Higgins go. I'm trading him. Why?
That seems like what they have to do at this point.
Can you really afford to pay Chase 42 mil and then Higgins 30? Tying up $70 million into 2 wide receivers, that's terrible roster construction.
I think that's why, when you look at Seattle, I think that's probably the pushback on why they got rid of DK. It was if JSN's extension's coming up, We're not going to pay both these guys 30 plus a year. We're going to pay one of these guys 30 plus, and go a Buffalo route and pay Josh Palmer 12 million a year.
And that's why, like with a guy like T, I think him going to a team with a lot of just I think a perfect team for him is just a team with a lot of young guys on cheap contracts. Like you can send him to the Patriots, who will have young guys on cheap contracts. You can send him to Green Bay, who have a lot of young guys right now on cheap contracts. I think there's a lot of great destinations for him. You can send him to an up and coming team with a lot of just young talent.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, yeah, like I just think that paying $70 million to two receivers and then another what is it, like $50 million to Joe Burrow? That's like $120 million just between a quarterback and two receivers.
Yeah.
That is not sustainable roster construction.
That's literally almost a third. That's almost half your cap. Not even a third. That's almost half. Like the cap's 270. You're paying 120 for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's being generous.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know the cap goes up every year, but yeah, you can't operate like that. Also, I'm glad you brought up Jackson because we were talking about Houston's wide receivers. I completely forgot they did get Christian Kirk in a trade, so they do have Kirk with Collins, but I think they could still use
yeah, I mean, you have John Mechie there, but he's not bad, but not anything too spectacular.
Yeah, Hutchinson. Yeah.
I didn't like
Hutchinson. If they could step up a little bit, like it would make it a little easier. But I guess we'll see how that goes.
Higgins to Houston would be cool too.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're just on that topic.
Yeah, but I mean, the Bengals got to do something. Like we need to see at some point either a extension for Chase, or at least something about rumors of a Higgins trade. I agree with you, Brett. The road that they're going down, they need to just kind of rip the Band-Aid off, move Higgins out, get something for him, because making him sit on the franchise tag for a second year isn't fair to him, and it just kind of makes you realize that he's just going to walk out the door next year. Because why would he want to sit there and negotiate with you next year knowing you don't want to pay him what he wants? You're just wasting his time. So, Cincinnati, man. Especially in that division too, it's like you got to deal with the Steelers defense, the Ravens defense, and you're just sitting.
I mean, you think Cincinnati would have learned? Probably one of Cincinnati's biggest mistakes last year was letting go of Jesse Bates. Their secondary went to shambles. Went over to Atlanta, brought their secondary up. Still not the best because Atlanta's still Atlanta. But you could saw major strides within Atlanta's secondary with him and AJ Terrell over there. And you saw how bad Cincinnati's secondary fell, without someone like Jesse Bates. And really what their offseason should have been is, should we decide between T. Higgins or Trey Hendrickson? And the concept that they're still going down the T. Higgins route rather than, paying a great defender when they had probably one of their worst defensive seasons while Joe Burrow was your quarterback. Man, you got to pay that man Trey Hendrickson, because it's not like he didn't want to stay. He said, "I just want my money to stay. Like I just want a better deal." What most players do. And the concept, you're like, go find your trade. We're going to worry about T. Higgins, and it's like, well, you don't need 2-star receivers. Maybe you should get this, quality position edge rusher.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Outside of quarterback, of course, I think we could probably confidently say edge rusher is the number 2 position, like premium wise, that you need in the league.
Yeah, safe to say that. Yeah. I think you're exactly right, Dylan. Like, if they were smart, they would have said, "Look, we're going to lock up Chase, we lock up Hendrickson, we deal Higgins off for picks or whatever." Because you have Yoshi Voss, who was a good number 3 last year. If he was your number 2, do you hate it? And then you draft somebody. Like you can kind of keep it rolling like that, but now you're sitting here in limbo with 2-star receivers, and neither of them have been paid. And Hendrickson could be out the door because you told him go find a trade.
And I very much I think it's, and of course, I think a lot of these times these GMs or these coaches get attached to who these players are. And I feel like that's a lot of what it is, because when you look at it just as a baseline, this draft is so good between running backs, receivers. Your skill position guys are so deep within this draft, where you could draft a guy like Jaden Higgins in the third round, and he's probably going to be good enough to be, your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, but potentially as a rookie. And it's just like when you look at it, you have Jamar Chase. It's not like, if this was a Bengals team without Jamar Chase, you would try your hardest to extend T. Higgins. You would have threw that second franchise tag on him until you could have figured out how to get it done. But you have Jamar Chase, who is way better, who is the best receiver in the league, 1 or 2. There's a 1A, there's a 2B, or 1A, 1B, and it's probably Chase and Jefferson. And so knowing that you have that caliber of a guy, a Triple Crown winner just as of last year, Higgins can't be your biggest priority. It can't be. It can't be. And it's not, and I hate to say it like that, but like he shouldn't even just be on the books. Like you shouldn't even be worrying about him on your books until you can figure out Jamar Chase. I think franchise tagging him for the time being was smart, especially just franchise tagging him and being like, hey, we tried working it out. Can you sign this? We'll trade you, and you can work out an extension with another team so you can at least get and recuperate things back for T. Higgins to, kind of build around a different identity, build around losing him, maybe use that third round pick to draft a receiver, and just save the cap to re-sign Trey Hendrickson. That's cool. But just overall, and Higgins is good, and it sucks to be T. Higgins in this situation because he probably loves Cincinnati and wants to stay there. He just wants to be paid for, his work. And it's just Cincinnati just can't do that. They physically can't do that.
Yeah. Jory mentioned, speaking on Atlanta, Fortino, the GM, might be on his last legs. Yeah, like they extended out Jake Matthews, who, fine as your left tackle. Grady Jarrett, who was like an Atlanta staple, out the door.
My best friend lives next door to Grady Jarrett in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. That's what's up. Look, when you thought of Atlanta, like Grady Jarrett was one of the first things you thought of because he'd been there so long and had been so productive that losing him is going to be a big deal for Falcons fans. I do know that they signed who did they sign? They did sign somebody yesterday.
They signed Leonard Floyd. They got Divine Diablo. They signed Mike Hughes.
Yeah. Fontenot probably should have been gone after last year, but like I feel like what they'll do is they'll leave him there to deal with the Kirk Cousins situation because you assume they have to do something with Kirk Cousins, and then they'll probably kick Fontenot out the door right with him. And Jory also said when you try to be cheap, this is what happens. Yep, that's Cincinnati for you.
It's always funny how that works. Like the cheaper you try to be, the more it just costs you.
Yeah, the more problems you cause. Yeah.
Since we kind of spoke on, Grady Jarrett and the Bears a little bit, who do you think our biggest? Who do we think our biggest winner of the free agency is so far? A free agency I guess we can say off season because the Bears did trade a lot. The Bears did trade a lot as well, and that's not technically classified as free agency.
Biggest winner of the offseason? It just might be the Bears. I do like the moves that they made to fortify the offensive line. Mm-hmm. I think that was huge for them, and not to mention, obviously, they got guys like Grady Jarrett who are just still impactful, but just great culture guys. For the second year in a row, the Bears have won the offseason. That translate on the field. Time will tell. But even like this offseason, like getting Ben Johnson in the building, like overall, I think it's tough to argue that. And, I think it's tough to argue against the Bears with that question. I think the Bears are just the biggest offseason winner.
Man, is this indicative just to say, like, the Bears got, a real head coach now? And it's just, like, he's actually making real head coach moves? Because I know they had a great offseason last year, of course, but, like, what is the first thing what are the first 3 moves Ben Johnson did in his Bears itinerary? Trade for Joe Thuney, trade for Jonah Jackson, sign Drew Gallman. 3 offensive linemen were his first 3 moves in the Bears' tenure. Like, you have a guy who knows what the problem is in Chicago and wants to fix that problem, and not against Justin Fields. Nothing against Justin Fields because he's not the GM, he's not the coach, he's not the one making these controls. But nobody knew what they were doing there at all. And it was just obvious we could tell. Because what was the first thing Ben Johnson said? My quarterback was sacked 68 times last year. Let me get 3 really good offensive linemen to protect him to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, look, he's an offensive guy, so
My,
he
my
took care of the
rookie
side of the
quarterback was
ball that matters the most to him.
It's all right. The NFL sack record's probably going to get shattered this year after C.J. Stroud's done in Houston because they don't have anybody protecting him at this point. That's going to
yeah,
kill him.
dude. Can we say they're one of probably the biggest losers of free agency?
Yeah.
Why? Like
I
Chauncey
think
Gardner
Cowboys.
Johnson is cool, but like you trade a young left guard like Kenyon Green after trading your that's probably arguably one of the best tackles in the league like Larmy Tunsil. And it's like they've made moves obviously to kind of recuperate some of that back, but it's just like it's like you lost arguably the left tackle, best tackle in the league, and Larmy Tunsil, and it's like let's sign Laken Tomlinson, and it's like okay, I'm not really sure how that evens out for you, but okay. It's like we released Shaq Mason, who is probably obviously being a Patriots fan. You had Shaq Mason in his really good time. Wasn't obviously as great as in Houston, but still better than Laken Tomlinson. And then it's just like you trade Kenyon Green away, who is a young guard, to sign an aging veteran one, and you haven't done anything else to replace that.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what the Houston Texans are doing in the draft. We do now. They're going offensive line.
Do we do we have faith in the Houston Texans? Like they had that really good draft with Stroud and Will Anderson, but they've just it seems since then it's just been a lot of questionable moves since then. So
yeah, they got Stroud, Robinson. Oh, they got Stroud, Anderson, Tank Dell. Like that draft literally created their whole identity. Nico Collins literally created their whole identity, and after that, like they kind of just gave up. They're like, oh man, like that wasn't enough. Uh oh.
Yeah. There are teams after the way they finished last season that could use a bounce back season this year.
I did like what Minnesota did this offseason as well too. I think Minnesota crushed it so far. If it wasn't the Bears, Minnesota might have probably been my pick, getting stronger on both sides of the line. You signed Jonathan Allen, like I mentioned. You piss off the Colts and you take Will Fries and Ryan Kelly from them. Basically take their two best offensive linemen outside of Quentin Nelson. And man, honestly, the Colts just had a great offensive line. I bet if you're a Colts fan, Anthony Richardson's about to get murdered next season. Because you had Braden Smith, Quentin Nelson, Will Fries, and Ryan Kelly. Your worst thing was what was it, a right tackle, left tackle? Colts gonna get murdered. But then you re-signed Byron Murphy to a 3-year deal, who played really good wasn't super great with Arizona, played a lot better with Minnesota. Still think he has a lot of things he needs to work on, but showed a lot more progression, way more than what he did with Arizona. Get Aaron Jones back on a 2-year, $20 million deal. I feel like that's good money for Aaron Jones. Overall, signed Javon Hargrave. I think it was a good offseason for Minnesota. I really like what they did.
Yeah. Jory put Bears had a good offseason. Patriots had a great start. Vikings made good moves. So I think those are three teams that after 2 days or so, those are probably the three teams that you're looking at as probably the most active, and because of that, you have to say they probably have done the best.
I'm penciling in Washington like as an honorable mention, or you can throw them in your list as well. Washington did amazing moves as well. And you may not like what Las Vegas did, but outside of trading for Geno, signing Jeremy Smith, I liked. Signing not a Landon Robbins, but re-signing Max Crosby, I liked. Overall, just different things, just little different odds and ends moves to help them out. I thought was really good. They're just a team that didn't do a lot of big moves, but they did a lot of little minor ones to kind of help out with what they did for trading for someone like Geno Smith. So I like that as well too.
Jory says, like the Dan Moore Jr. signing allows for a first-round tackle last year to play his natural position this season. Yeah.
Agreed.
They made a couple other signings today as well.
Agreed. I very much. I'm not a big fan of when, and especially when it comes to first round talents, like I feel like a later round, especially when it comes to linemen, I just don't like when, you draft this first round tackle who has played right tackle dominantly in college, and you're like, let's get him in and move him at left. And it's like, why would you do that? It's like, I feel like those are for more so project guys. It's like, hey, you played a lot of snaps at right tackle. We really like what you do. Let's move you to left so you can get like some snaps, a starting spot. But
Mm-hmm.
Layton was so good as a position, and he struggled a little bit. Still, really, it's not horrible by any means. But now getting him to go play his natural position again, it's like, oh, if you did that to begin with, you would have just seen the strides, and you would have seen how good he was, and it might have changed, a little bit of what you did in the offseason.
But
Dan
we
Moore
know,
probably wouldn't have been your way.
yeah, but we know when it comes to tackles, the left tackle is always viewed more than right tackle, especially if you have a right-handed quarterback. So that's
And they
probably
move tackles to guards as well
yeah,
too. Like Peter
yeah.
Skoronsky, a
That's
big
the reason
example.
for the switch. But I agree with you. You put him at his natural position. You now
If you're
shore up
spending a
left
first round
side,
pick on him, at
and
least,
then you
if you're
bring in a
spending a
left
first round
tackle.
pick on the guy, all your tape you're watching on this guy, all the time you spent with this guy is at that natural position. And now maybe you've seen him switch, go back and forth a little bit in college. Obviously they do that. But if you're drafting a guy with your first round pick, I'm going to draft him to play his natural position.
Yeah.
And the thing with Dan Moore Jr., and I think a lot of people forget, like, was he bad last year? Yeah, but he's still only 26. He's still very young, and he had spent the last 3 years just winning, positional battles against like guys like Broderick Jones, at his position.
Mm-hmm.
He's been, earning his keep for the most part, and then he has a down 2024. And the thing with the Titans is they're not paying anybody. So who really cares if they overpaid a little bit for a tackle, right? You can say they
And
overpaid a
especially
lot of it, a little bit. I don't think it really matters because, like, who do the Titans have to pay in the next 2 years? Because it's $50 million guaranteed for the next 2 years, and if it doesn't work out, you can get out of the contract after that point. Who in the next 2 years am I going to sit there going, oh yeah, this contract is going to prevent us from playing blank? So I think people are overreacting it to this contract by a bunch because I think, one, you shore up your offensive line. I think, he does bounce back. And once again, you don't have to pay anybody for the next 2 years. So who really cares, right?
And let's
agreed. And if you also
take Cam Ward number one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was my point.
They're ready for him.
Yep, that's exactly where I was going to go down. I was like, who cares if you're overpaying on a tackle when you're most likely going to be bringing a rookie quarterback in? And even if you're not, let's say I've been vocal about this. Let's say they go down that realm of possibility, draft like Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. Let's say they don't want to go quarterback. You still have a great offensive lineman, great offensive line for whoever you bring in, or if you decide, hey, we're running it back to Will Levis this year. He was sacked a lot. He was pressured a lot last year. Now, at least you can see what he can do with a more solidified O-lineman, like O-line, just in general.
Gives you options. That's usually the best thing to have. Jory did say most of his sacks allowed were from Myles Garrett, which Myles Garrett would do that to a lot of tackles. So,
49ers just made a move. They signed Demarcus Robinson, 2 years, $9.5 million. That man's been on every team, it feels like now, too. Chiefs, Ravens, Rams, 49ers.
right. He's hanging around. Yeah, I respect it. I mean, unless you guys have any other, I guess, teams or anything you want to talk about, I think we've kind of hit on most of the free agency so far. As crazy as it's been.
Okay, just a sneaky one. I thought Tampa Bay did really good this offseason. You got Chris Godwin back. You signed Hassan Reddick. I think resetting Ben Breedson was good. I'm surprised Levante David still is playing football, but you re-signed Levante David to a deal. That's cool. I love Levante David. And if I think of Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like even as like just the last couple of years, like 5-6 years, I'm always thinking Levante David. So I'm completely cool with that. Keep him in the house. I love it. But overall, I thought they did good. A playoff team last year. You didn't really lose too much. Your biggest offseason need was re-signing Chris Godwin. You didn't have a lot of guys that you really necessarily needed to re-sign. And then you get Hassan Reddick, who's a good edge rusher. Something that you kind of struggled with itself. You lose Joe Shayanka, who's your first round pick, who wasn't really that good for you, and you replace him with Hassan Reddick. Cool. I'm completely fine with that trade-off. I mean, you just got better. If you're Tampa Bay, you didn't really get worse. And that's good because you were a conference winner last year.
And I just wanted to address Jory's comment because she's preparing herself for the eventual return of Mayo Man. I would go challenge the entire Titans front office to a boxing match in the parking lot if I was a fan of Tennessee and Will Levis was coming back. I would feel so bad. No, and I get it. I've heard it all before.
Yeah.
It's, oh, well, he had a bad O-line, etc. If you have talent, it'll flash through. Then that's kind of the problem. That talent, whatever it was, just never flashed through. Drake May, technically, according to PFF, had a worse O-line, and talent flashed through. Nothing about last year showed me that Will Levis should be brought back. And I think even if you don't go quarterback one, call the Patriots. See if you can bring him Joe Milton or somebody that, might be able to flash some potential, but that would just be an all-time, hilarious level blunder if they randomly brought back Will Levis.
I mean, he's sitting on the commercial.
You draft Cam Ward to play him. You draft Cam Ward to play him week 1.
Yeah. I mean, they're saying the
man. You got to get those growing pains out of the way because it's like, if you draft Cam Ward, you already have given the fact that you don't want to learn anything else about Will Levis. Like, if you draft Cam Ward, you should automatically unhitch your wagon from them. And it's not to hit on Will Levis, not to say that he can't teach Cam Ward anything. What is Will Levis going to? What is Cam Ward really going to gain sitting behind Will Levis for a year? Genuinely nothing.
I think it's either Cam Ward or they're just going to trade the pick unless they're really in love with Abdul Carter, which I wouldn't doubt it. But I also think every year there's that team that's willing to overpay for that number 1 overall pick. We saw it, with Carolina.
I think it's New York this year.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw it with the 49ers trading up for Trey Lance. And if I were the Titans, if I'm not fully sold on Cam Ward, I would still, take Carter if I had the pick and I'm not sold on Ward. But also, I would absolutely look to ship it and start a bidding war because, you will get that team that's willing to completely overpay for Ward.
Yeah, sadly, the Giants at 3. The Giants' worst nightmare would be if Titans take Cam Ward at 1, and let's just say Cleveland, who needs a quarterback. I mean, they did trade for Kenny Pickett, but trust me, you still need a quarterback. If they took Shedeur Sanders at 2, the Giants, who need a quarterback, would then be sitting there at 3 with no quarterback to take. So
maybe I'm out
on the door. Hear that Tennessee makes it open, they may jump Cleveland to get the quarterback that they want, and you can get the 3 pick and you get a bunch more capital. That is the way to go. And you can still take Carter at 3.
I very much believe Tennessee is open to willing to trade the pick. I don't think New York wants Shedeur. I don't think they think he's that worth that talent. I feel like if they have an open opportunity to get Cam Ward, they will do it. I don't think they'll take a quarterback at 3. If let's say if the first 3 picks are even, let's say Ward, Abdul Carter, or Travis Hunter, and New York sitting there at 3, I think they're going to take the best player available. They're not 1 year away. They're not a quarterback away of winning. That's why they plan on citing a veteran quarterback. Get them there, see what talent they can do. If they thought they were at that point, a rookie quarterback's not going to do it. Shedeur Sanders is not going to do it. I feel like they're going to take best player available unless they have an opportunity for Cam Ward. I think Shedeur is kind of in an iffy spot. Man, he's kind of just dropped through this. I feel like a lot of the times throughout the whole process, we were talking about who's the QB1. Now I think it's, we know who our QB1 is. Who's the best QB2? Because, you see names like Jackson Dart and different things, shoot up. And all I see is Shedeur just keep moving down and down and down, as where Cam Ward is still staying at that solidified number 1 spot, regardless if it's a trade or regardless if Tennessee's taking the pick. It's always been Shedeur, or always been Cam Ward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the closer we get to the draft, we'll start hearing teams like Shedeur, but they would be more comfortable taking him maybe in the teens or bottom of the top 10, not necessarily top 5. So it may turn to a situation.
You know what San Francisco should have done? Just go all in on Shedeur and just move on from Brock Purdy.
I mean, yeah, because they have they have Carolina's pick, I think number 11. So if you're the Niners and you kind of see the board falling a certain way and you had to move up a little bit, that would, I mean, save a lot of money. You could use that
Save you
draft
a
free
ton of
money
money.
and replenish the kind of the guys you lost already this offseason. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of all we got. Like it was a busy free agency. Uh, I know Brett, you got a show coming up here in a little bit, which I'll give you a chance to kind of let people know what to look forward to there. But you guys have anything before we get out of here?
Yeah, I want to message to all my Packer fans complaining about the Aaron Brooks 77 mil a year. Be patient. Let's let these contract details come out. I think this is like the fakest 77 mil we're ever going to see.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, a big sign of that is normally these agents are really quick to get these guarantees and bonuses and everything in the news cycle. Nothing has been heard yet about this Aaron Banks contract. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be one of those that pretty much it's a signing bonus, and we're going to pay him for a year, and after that, it's a bunch of team options. So, if I'm a Packers fan, and I'm worried about that contract. Be patient, let the details come out, and then we can make our judgments from there.
Yeah, that's not how it works. With free agency, you got to react to everything as you first see it. Like that's what these fans love to do. But I mean, Dylan, you got anything on to add before we get out of here?
I mean, outside of enjoy some conference, championship basketball this weekend. If you're a big college basketball fan, some great games. Matt, this is where madness really starts. This is where you start seeing, for example, not sure if anyone's kept up with the SoCon championship, but Wofford, a 19-16 team, just won their conference tournament. So they're getting that insta bid. So just different things like that. I love March Madness. I love just seeing it. Delaware is a 12 seed, has literally like 13 and 22, like 13 and 17 this season, playing in a conference championship tonight.
Yeah.
Love March Madness, love college basketball. So just enjoy a lot of that. Selection Sunday is going to be really big. Enjoy free agency. We still got a lot more dominoes to fall from, receivers to running backs to so many other things, and even players that could get traded. So, enjoy it. Hopefully, everyone's teams do moves that they like. Unless it hurts my team, then I hope it doesn't happen. But overall, other than that, just enjoy it. This is my favorite time. March, April is my favorite time of the year when it comes to sports. Draft, free agency, March Madness. So I'm living my best life right now. Outside of Seattle, kind of blowing it up, but we'll get there.
Yeah. And look, I completely ditto that. It's just like free agency is a fun time because it gives you kind of a window into what your next season will look like. But yeah, like you said, Brett, you gotta let some of these things breathe a little bit. Like you can't overreact right away. Because look, even though a guy may have struggled on one team, they come into yours different system, they may thrive. Like give your coaching staff a chance to work them in and see if they do fit or not. So, yeah, I mean, Dylan, like you said, there's plenty free agency still left. We'll definitely talk about that next week.
Please, Diggs,
Getting closer,
Seattle.
getting
Please,
closer to
Diggs,
the
come to
NBA
Seattle.
playoffs and everything. Yeah, I mean, look, hopefully next week, you'll have some Seattle signings to talk about.
Diggs to Seattle. You know Clint Kubiak so well, Stephon. Come back. Come back. I'm saying though, Stephon Diggs played his best football those last years in Minnesota when Clint Kubiak was offensive coordinator. Come back, come on, please. I need something happy.
Yeah. I mean,
Sam Darnold can't be my only offseason news. Sam Darnold cannot be my only offseason news. I can't hitch my wagon on a Sam Darnold train. I can't do it. I can't. Give me some hope.
Well, all right. So hopefully by next week, Diggs is signed in Seattle, and Dylan could be a little bit happier with their offseason. Yeah. So look, appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you give us a like. Appreciate those in the chat. Jory, always appreciate you. You're a regular. Make sure you follow or subscribe. Wire to Wire Network. Up next, got Brett with Meaty Boys. I don't know if you want to tease what you guys might be talking about on there. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a big fan of professional wrestling, check us out on Meaty Boys. We're gonna be talking the AEW pay per view that was just this past Saturday, AEW Revolution. We're gonna be talking some Road to WrestleMania, what we saw on Monday Night Raw, a reaction to it. So definitely check us out. It's gonna be a fun time.
Punk choke, like when Reigns choke, holding Rollins out of the steel cage,
Yeah, that was a great.
stomping him. I wish he would have double foot stomped him though, but Rollins is too big for that. Not Rollins, Reigns is too big for that.
Yeah.
I would have killed him. Yeah, so make sure you guys stick around for that, for Meaty Boys to get caught up on the wrestling news. Make sure you are back here next Tuesday, 7 o'clock, for another edition of the On the Ball podcast. Appreciate all of you. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you next week. All right. Good night.